So do you know how Rye Brook was formed?
No.
Do you know when Rye Brook was formed?
No.
Do you know how the village of Rye Brook was formed?
No.
Do you know how Rye Brook was formed? Do you know how the village of Rye Brook was formed?
No.
Do you know how the village of Rye Brook was formed?
No.
Do you know any of the people who helped form it?
Nope.
Yes, because you told me.
If I didn't tell you, would you have known?
No.
Do you know how they got the name Rye Brook? Do you know how the village of Rye Brook was formed?
No, I don't know.
Would it surprise you to know that it's about taxation without representation?
Yes.
It's understandable that our kids aren't experts on how Rye Brook came to be. But while celebrating the 30th birthday of their village, it certainly seems time to remind them. While today everyone enjoys the actual brook which runs through town, the open spaces, the quiet and beautiful streets, and our highly acclaimed school district, it's all a vision that wasn't a certainty in the early 80s. This is a story of how a band of ordinary citizens began a uniquely American journey, which has led to today's Rye Brook.
Do you know how Rye Brook was formed?
I think it was separated from Portchester in 1982.
I know that it was formed in 1982, and before that it was part of the town of Rye.
You got a guy that's laid back here, I tell you something. My name is Jack Cabsinell, and I was the mayor of Rye Brook, the very first mayor. It was just a neighborhood action. Everybody wanted to be part of it. They put in their time, they put in their money, because we had to come up with money for things too, and they were there.
Back in 1982, I was part of the steering committee of the Independent Civic Association, which was the group that actually formed the Village of Rye Brook.
My name is Amy Schoen, and in 1982 I was working. I was a working mother at that time, which was rather unusual for Rye Brook.
I'm Richard Abel, and I was editor and publisher of the Westmore News back in 1982.
My name is Joan Feinstein, and I know where we were in 1982 because we moved here in January of 1982. And not only did we move here, I was pregnant at the time with our son, who was born in June of 1982.
We were nonpartisan, we were non-paid, we were community residents who lived in the community and was responsible to each of our neighbors.
We were about 8 of us in the airport committee, and Milt Meiskin was the chair of the airport committee, and he told us one winter day that there were 4 or 5 men that had been working together for a couple of years, thinking about trying to turn the unincorporated area into a village.
When he called a meeting here, it was just wonderful news to know that those people who were represented and hearing this idea rose to the occasion almost instantaneously.
I called that committee together and I shared with them the information that now is the time to form a village. Are you for it? Enthusiasm reigned that evening, and they all said, yes, what do we do?
To this day, you still will hear, we left Portchester. We broke away. We were never part of Portchester. We never were part of the village. We were always part of the unincorporated area.
People still think, both from Portchester and from Rye Brook, that Rye Brook seceded from Portchester. There's this thing, this idea that somehow they were connected, and the only way they were connected was through the town of Rye.
We were governed by the town of Rye, and the population of Portchester, which was about 24,000, I think, at that point, we were about 8,000. We had no representation.
It didn't matter if 100% of the unincorporated area voted one way, it had absolutely no voice.
Right.
And that was the trigger from my perspective, and I think a number of people, that we just didn't control anything because the votes were just unequal.
We had no say in who represented us. None.
We were outvoted by a great majority, and this was of great concern because a lot of people who lived here at the time had worries about whether or not they'd be able to continue to live here because we would be paying exorbitant taxes.
The part we were in no longer had any representation, and therefore we found and fussed around and all and did something to see if we could change and still have one man, one vote.
So by the fact that we were able to form a village, we had our own direct representation. And the Chappie Pasilipo, who was the town supervisor, was very quietly backing us.
Anthony Chappie Pasilipo was the supervisor of the town of Rye for many, many years. He was a Portchester-grown person. He was a former mayor of Portchester, but he had great vision. When we came up with the concept of a village, I can remember it distinctly. Chappie was an initiator, if you will, because in November of 1981, we were watching election results coming in from various parts of the town, and Chappie was standing next to me and to my wife, Joni, who was chairwoman of the Democratic Party of the town of Rye. And as he watched the results coming in, he said, "You know, Milt and Joni," he said, "it's time that the unincorporated area had its own unique identity. You ought to form a municipality." And we in turn said to him, "Will you support it if we do?" And he said, "Definitely." He said, "I believe in self-determination. I believe people should have the freedom and the initiative, if they want it, to form their own municipality, and I will support it."
They took a look at all this unincorporated land in Westchester and decided, hey, let's make a village of it. So they took a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and they came up with Rye Brook Village.
The main reason for starting the movement for a village was the need to have full representation. Based on the nature of the law before, we did not have full representation. We did not have the one man, one vote guaranteed us by the Supreme Court.
It's not a question of self-pride, it's a question of community pride, because this was done not by any one individual, any two individuals. It was done by citizens who really wanted to have self-determination of how their votes were cast, how they were governed, how their services were provided.
Several of us meeting in my living room, as a matter of fact, decided that maybe there's something we can do. And we did recognize that it had not been done in the state in 50 years.
All of a sudden, I believe it was either the end of February or beginning of March, I can't tell you the exact time, I'm getting articles, pamphlets about the incorporation and to move from the town of Rye and to become an independent village.
We met here on a Friday evening and we passed out the petitions with one proviso: only go door to door, ask people to sign it, tell them what it's about, and tell them how the structure would be vaguely done.
It was freezing cold. We divided up, about 4 of us went with the original 4 or 5 men.
We walked house to house throughout the entire community to get people to sign the petition.
We were out in the street with our kids, and people were walking around, and we were saying, what's going on? And they explained it to us, and we said, how can we join? And we began walking petitions that day with them. That was over the weekend, and it was filed the following Monday.
It was a very different time. I think that the excitement of being part of something new and important got people wanting to do more.
We got 1,500 signatures that weekend, Saturday and Sunday.
Monday morning, bright and early, the petitions were delivered to Chappie Pasilipo, who smiled, accepted them, and said, "Great work, and now we go ahead. You're on your own."
It's important to note that in this community we have 2 school systems. 2/3 of the residents of Rye Brook go to the Blind Brook school system, an excellent school system, and we have a second excellent school system, the Portchester school system, which is in the southern part of the village.
Before they formed the village in '82, some of those same individuals were behind the creation of the Blind Brook High School.
I was on the Board of Education in 1971 to about 1977, and that was the years that we decided to have our own high school.
Historically, everybody went kindergarten through 8th grade at Ridge Street, then they added a 9th grade, then eventually they went on 10th, 11th, and 12th to the Portchester High School on a tuition basis.
I took typing at Portchester High School. I took driver's ed at Portchester High School. I had friends from Portchester, and remember, Rye Brook didn't exist then. It was the unincorporated area of Rye Town. It was too long to say, and Portchester was sort of the center.
Basically, Albany said, we don't want more school systems. We don't want small. We want you to merge. So they basically told the Ridge Street School District, District 5, merge with anybody. Merge with Portchester. Merge with Harrison.
And somehow or other, Portchester decided not to have our children, so they went to Valhalla, and then they went to Mamaroneck.
The Portchester School Board voted to not accept any more tuition students. So that's a misconception that's been around forever, that Blind Brook, oh, they separated and they didn't want. The Portchester School Board voted to not accept my class and said, we're not going to take any more, and any more Ridge Street School kids. So what became the Blind Brook School District, they had to go and scurry around and find a place for us 70 kids.
And in that traveling time of about maybe 3 graduating classes, we decided we needed our own school.
That school was told by the State Board of Education it could not exist. And through some political manipulations that I really don't think I should talk about, we were able to build that school and to make it into one of the finest schools.
They gave us nothing. This was all built with residents' money, taxpayer money. The community wanted it.
At the time we built the school, the high school, we didn't have enough money to move the furniture from one school to another. So everybody rented cars. They all did it personally. We washed the floors in the new school and all that. There was that kind of thing. There was no problem. You called somebody up and will you be there? Yes, you will be there.
I moved to Rye Brook with my family in 1971. Blind Brook High School, the referendum for the high school had gone through, and we knew it was going to be built. If that had not happened, we would not have moved here.
Had Blind Brook High School not existed, and the kids were still going to Portchester or Mamaroneck or whatever other schools, we would not have moved into this area. The existence of the high school was one of the key elements. Gloria is an educator, and one of the most important things we looked at in deciding where to move was the educational system.
Once we built the high school, it created an identity. It was a place for our children, it was a place for all of us to be. And it kept evolving until the Pace College study that Portchester had started and Pace College had participated. One of their options was to eliminate the village of Portchester and take all of the town of Rye into one governing body, which would have almost eliminated our identity as a separate unit from Portchester.
The Pace study had shown that to help our neighboring community of Portchester, they should start annexing off Rye Ridge Shopping Center, I guess the Rye Town, Hilton, wherever they could find a substantial tax base.
The point of the entire story, as you probably know by now, was the Pace study and the ability to control one's destiny.
Since this hadn't been done in 50 years, there was a wonderful group of people that just worked at this and tried to put it together, and we happened to do it.
Crawford Mansion was a centrally located area in the unincorporated area of the town of Rye. It brought in the northern part of it, the southern part of it, the eastern part of it, the western. It brought in all segments of the area. It was on a main road, right on Ridge Street.
And I do remember something that I will never forget. There was such a long line to vote.
I still have a vivid memory of directing cars to where to go to park.
It's never been a turnout like this. They were coming in by the hundreds. The opposition were busing them in from the nursing homes. They were coming in on stretchers. I mean, it was a very close vote. District 4 did not want this. It was a really, really close vote.
But as soon as the count was announced, the room just broke out in joys and shrieks and cheers and tears. I remember tears. We were just very, very emotional.
People were excited. I mean, we're on our, it was very emotional. I get choked up a little by that, but it was very emotional.
It was a very exciting time because it really got a whole community, almost everybody in that community had an opinion on whether it should happen or not.
It was an extraordinary event to be part of. It was the impetus of wanting to do more. And this is a beginning. It's not an end. It's just the beginning. But what a wonderful beginning it was.
It's an interesting name, isn't it? First of all, I always think a cachet of two names is something, really very nice about two names. Just sounds good, especially when the first word is short.
Well, you had the town of Rye, which we've always been part of since 1660, this area, when the town of Rye was settled.
Chappie was involved in it. They decided that at least it had to have the name Rye in it.
You have the Blind Brook, which forms our boundary with the town of Harrison.
We were trying to bring in, since it was the town of Rye, and something about Brook. And I know there was a gas station in Rye.
In 1952, 3 Army guys came back, good friends. They pretty much figured, they go, I know how to do this, I know how to do that. Pooled up the money, put together a shop. And at the time, still just town of Rye, you had the brook behind us. And at the end of the day, you had Rye Brook service. Pretty much till this day, you still have one of the original owner's sons here, going on 60 years.
Joining Rye and the brook together, I think it was a really creative name.
Oh, there were signs all over the village, on their streets, and just all over. People were into this game. Wherever it was they were going to vote, they were into it. They knew this was their place, and they got to make it work. Oh yes, there were many, many heated debates.
Change is a fearsome word, and people get comfortable. And we were shaking things up.
We clearly wanted Jack. I mean, we really believed he was like the father of this whole thing.
Jack was a very strong candidate, and I think he was knowledgeable. He had a way of communicating with people.
And our first speaker will be Dr. Jack Capsonell.
The real responsibility of a mayor is to exercise leadership, to provide direction, and hopefully to get people to work in harmony toward common goals.
No financial reason for somebody to run. They run because they want to do their civic responsibility.
I had been involved in so much, and I'm comfortable speaking, and I was prepared to spend half of my life doing this, so that's how it happened.
His opposition was angry, and it came across in the way in which he communicated his position.
Sam was a Portchester man all the way through, and he would have been a good leader, but he really didn't want this village to be formed.
I do remember that debate now.
Yeah, me
the,
too.
between
I
the
was
two.
actually at that debate.
Yes. The biggest issue in that election was the cost of the new government. And the ICA said it was only going to cost $30,000 more, and the other side said, no way, it's going to cost a lot more.
How much will the new village government cost taxpayers, and why?
They will not let us get that service for nothing. Now, how much does that service cost? Approximately $250,000 a year.
Oh yeah, the debates were kind of ornery. I think we could have put them on the TV right now.
I'm clearly suggesting we are paying for everything else now, and it works. Why destroy it? Why recreate it? I don't know of anything you tear down and rebuild that doesn't cost more money when you rebuild it.
There were people who really could not understand. Most of them had maybe many years in Portchester and thought we were leaving Portchester, which of course we didn't do because we were never in Portchester.
Oh, wow. Yes, oh my Lord. That was our symbol, the handshake. We wanted it to be including everybody.
Our intent right from the beginning was to make this a very inclusive village. I didn't believe anybody should be excluded. The unincorporated area was geographically marked, and those people within it were going to be part of the village, and that was the intent. I could not have imagined excluding them.
80% of the residents voted. That's unheard of.
The percentage of people voting was just incredible.
And it was so festive. It was an election for candidates, and we were hoping we would win. Our polling, which was absolutely rudimental, you asked people on the street, seemed to indicate we would win.
Overwhelmingly, the candidates proposed by the Independent Civic Association won. Now we have to do what we said we would do.
I wanted people to know. I spent 2 years getting Rye Brook on any of the signs on the highway. They told me, we're not doing signage now. Well, they were getting annoyed by me again and again and again. And I love going up on the hutch and seeing Rye Brook.
Once the village was formed, we rented all of our services for the first few years from the town of Rye. We suddenly said that, if there is a crime committed or if there is a need for more police protection in a certain area of the village, we have to go to the supervisor of the town of Rye, because it was the town of Rye Police Department.
It was all Rye Town services, and I think that you can't serve two masters. And the village board wants the police to go in one direction, but they only can make a suggestion. The village was formed because they wanted this area to be governed in a particular way. Quality of life. That's something, as long as I've been on the police department, has always been a priority.
You have all the buildings up on the airport corridor, all the corporate headquarters. You have the Hilton, you have Arrowwood. All of this building, all of these rateables are in Rye Brook.
I think the shopping center in particular, all the shopping centers have really been attuned to the needs of the community. And to see the throngs of people come in, and young people, they have a place to go and to meet their friends. It's a place that people now congregate. It is a community.
And it shows what we have and where we've come. And I think it's been a marvelous ride.
Everything just rolls along today. It seems like it was always the way it is.
Rye Brook wouldn't be what it is if we didn't have the trees and the landscaping and some of the rural character that remains. I remember, for example, if you were at the Pine Ridge Park back then, it was developed in stages. You would actually, seeing where that ball field is now, you would be playing tennis, watching sheep grazing in the meadow there.
I think the history of the village of Rye Brook is so important. As we keep saying, we're very small, but we're mighty.
I think even the people here now don't even have any idea how hard it was, or they just know Rye Brook.
The democratic process said, this is what we want, and I think it became very successful.
I really give credit to the original founders for having that vision.
It's why we were founded in the first place. We can go back to 1776.
And most people don't know they're making history when it's being made. Right. And that was really exciting. And we'll never forget it. It's part of us.
It was hard work, and it was fun, and we had a place to go, we had a sight to see, and it was just a wondrous time.
It was one of the best experiences of my life. It was just exciting.
It was elation. It was very fulfilling.
In the end, the vision was always to have a nice place to live, and I think that's been accomplished.
We're still living here. We enjoy living here. We've enjoyed watching the community grow and flourish and take on a life of its own.
It's kind of quiet, and it's pretty small, so you have a lot of friends.
It's nice because it's like a small town, so you know everyone.
I feel like everybody's a lot closer with their neighbors than if in like a big city.
It's a wonderful community. Everybody takes care of everybody else. Everybody looks out for each other. It's a small town, but with a lot of warmth.
A great sense of pride, because I don't think any of us could really have foreseen how far the village would have come.
It's a good place to live.
The community, being a wonderful, active community of people, said, is there something we can do? Somehow I got in the middle of that.
I wouldn't have moved back if I didn't love it, and I have very fond memories of my childhood here. I have very fond memories raising a family here.
When you have that passion and you have a people band together to implement change, that's what's good about our country. That's what makes our country unique, and that's what happened in Rye Brook.
If there was a national anthem of Rye Brook, what would it be?
The sun will come out in Rye Brook. Bet your bottom dollar that in Rye Brook there'll be sun. Just thinking about Rye Brook.
Oh, that's awesome!